6 months on from my very first Kindle Paperwhite, 6.8 inch. What do I think? Thank you guys for being here with me today. My name is Wade Vincent, and I wanted to do a review video of the Kindle 6.8 inch Paperwhite, the newest Paperwhite that's available, and what I think after buying my very first Kindle and reading on it every day for 6 months. So I'm here to share with you the things I like, the things I don't like, and whether or not I recommend that you should get yourself a Kindle Paperwhite. So stay tuned. Alright, so most certainly out of the gate, to give you guys what you came here to ultimately hear, I 100% recommend the Kindle Paperwhite. Today I'm going to share with you my top pros and my top cons of the Kindle Paperwhite 6.8 inch. Alright, so I'm going to start with the pros. Right now, one of the nicest things about this model Kindle is it now has a warm light for reading at night. Absolutely wonderful. It's a nice experience. It's a warm, soft yellow light, and it really makes reading at night a pleasure. It's not intrusive or an intense light, and you can also adjust not only the color spectrum of the light but the intensity of the light as well. So it's really easy to read this in bed, and knowing that I don't need to keep my night light on and switch off the bright white light to read this at night, it's a fantastic upgrade on the new Kindle. Also, it has a night mode, so similar to dark mode on computers and devices that we have, where you can invert the text to white and the background to a black color, which is also handy as well if you prefer reading in that manner. So the Kindle does certainly have a dark mode as well. One of the other pros that the Kindle has that is a fantastic thing is the inbuilt dictionary. So whenever you're reading, I find this is an exceptional upgrade on the experience of reading a normal, what we call like a tree book, because when I don't understand a word that I'm reading in a book right now, what I typically do is I grab out my phone and then I search the word. Right now with the Kindle, I just hold my finger on top of the word for a second or two, and then it pops up and gives me the definition. It's very intuitive, it's very easy, and I feel it keeps you engaged in the book because you're getting the information about what you're reading from the source you're reading it from. So it's a nice way to not break up your reading with a traditional book, having to stop and get on a phone or pick up another, if you're old school, pick up a physical dictionary to look up words. So it's a fantastic pro, in my opinion, having the inbuilt dictionary. Another obvious pro of the Kindle is the portability and having thousands of books available in your pocket. Now, I believe there is 2 versions of the Kindle in the sense of storage. There's a 8 gig and I think a 16 gig. I purchased the 8 gig model because book files aren't very big at all, and I believe it was hundreds, if not close to 1,000 books that I can hold on the 8 gig. And I saw someone do calculations online. You couldn't even read that many books in your life. So 8 gig is more than enough, and I recommend, unless you have maybe graphic novels or manga or anime that takes up a little more space, you don't need the 16 gigs. Another pro that I really like is the referring to footnotes. So if you're reading something and it has a reference that it wants to point you to, traditionally in a physical book, you would flip to the back of the book and read the notes or the reference or the source for the quote. With the Kindle, it has very similar to a HTML link with a line underneath the text, and you just press it and it jumps you perfectly to the reference point. So it feels far more I think I said in the original video when I got the Kindle, reading 2.0. So it feels like an enhanced way to read because everything is almost like a far more interactive reading experience is I guess what I'm trying to say. You really start to navigate back and forward using your Kindle device through the book very easily. So it's a really nice experience in that regard as well. So I see that as a big pro. Quite possibly my favorite pro of the Kindle, since I read and I love to extract the key things or the things that stand out in a book that have impact or hit me or resonate with me, and I'll often take a physical book and highlight passages. Now with the Kindle, it has that ability to highlight any text you wish, and the beautiful thing that makes this not only wonderful because you can highlight the text that is relevant or important to you when you're reading a book. What else I love about the way that the Kindle structures that data is then you're able to go back and just review the critical or the key snippets that you've highlighted throughout the book. So almost like an abridged, concise version you can create of your own book. So fantastic for note-taking, studying, revision, key points that you want to reference quickly and easily without needing to go back through the book and flick through physical pages and look at highlights and try and determine why you highlighted them. So it's a really nice way to get the most value out of your book in a concise manner. Another pro that I find with the Kindle is the ease to hold it. The size is fantastic. Now, I waited myself personally until the 6.8 inch Kindle came out because the previous model being 6 inches, it felt very small and minute, and it almost felt like a toy to me. I didn't like the size. I thought it was a little too small. Now I know some people enjoy that and they think, oh, it's a really good size, it's portable, it's easy to take around. But for me as a man, I don't have the biggest hands in the world, but they're not little hands either. And for me, this size, I can hold the Kindle absolutely perfectly, very comfortably, easily in one hand, and it doesn't get uncomfortable. Like if I'm reading like this, for instance, and I'm just having a coffee in the morning when I like to read and open up my Kindle, it's not tiring. It's not as heavy as a book is. I don't need two hands to hold the pages. For those of you that read physical books like I have most of my reading journey, you often find pages are flipped back, or especially if it's a new book, you've got to really open up or press them down and try and put a bit more effort into holding the book. With the Kindle, what I love is it's so easy to hold, and the flat screen is beautiful because you're not needing to as I say, press the book down or turn the page against trying to read the left page or the right page. Every page is front on, forward facing you, and just perfectly flat and aligned, and it's really nice experience in holding the book and the size of the Kindle. Another pro that I think is great about the Kindle, especially for me, now I wear glasses as I'm getting into my 40s, and I find it really, really helpful and soothing to be able to adjust the font and the text size in the Kindle. So it's really nice for those of you that are very familiar with physical books. When you say you order a book online, right? Like most of us probably do nowadays. As much as I love physical books, you can see I don't often get to a bookstore, so I usually would buy a book online, and quite often I've been disappointed when I've opened up a book and the text is so tiny. It's like a font size 8 or a 10, and it's really condensed and tiny, and it makes the book challenging or frustrating to read purely because it's so compact, right? And once you've bought it online, it's pretty much too late. You didn't know. If you were in a bookstore, you open it, you could see, or perhaps choose to buy a different print version of that book. With the Kindle, you can choose the font that is most soothing or pleasant to your eyes. that's easier to read for you, and just with the simple pinch motion that we're familiar with an iPhone, you can easily adjust the size of the font, larger and smaller. So it's fantastic you can change your Kindle to read and present text to you in the way that is most comfortable for you. So a massive pro there. Another great pro is the ability to sync your reading progress across multiple devices. So I have the Kindle app on my iPhone as well. I don't like to read on the phone. That's one of the reasons I bought the Kindle with the e-ink technology, is to have a device that is not bombarding me with the bright light from behind the screen constantly in my eyes. I feel we have enough devices in our lives. So one of the huge benefits when I got onto the Kindle originally was the way the lighting was structured, and because of the ability to sync across devices, I can read on my Kindle, and if I really want to read on a tablet or perhaps my phone, say I forget my Kindle and I'm traveling and I've got a great book that I just can't put down and I'm dying to know what happens next, I can very easily jump onto one of my other devices and synchronize up to the point that I was at on the device I was reading originally. So another fantastic way to utilize your Kindle device. Probably one of the greatest unintentional benefits perhaps of a Kindle is books are cheaper. It's almost half price most times that I'm buying a book on a Kindle. Now, typically if I went to a physical bookstore in Australia where I live, I could get a normal sort of size paperback, maybe 250 pages, is generally around $30, $25, depending on the popularity of the book and you know how new it is, right? Quite often when I'll find on the Amazon store, when I go to get a Kindle version of a book, they're usually $15 or less, and I've managed to get books at times for $4 and $2. It's so much cheaper than buying physical books. So the fact that I can get the same book, the same version, for often half price or less is a no-brainer for me. And that alone, the savings on physical books, has repaid my investment in a Kindle. And in essence, the Kindle becomes free then. So a huge pro if you're thinking of buying a Kindle. The price of books is so much cheaper than physical books. And I'd say the last pro that I want to mention is the Kindle quotes. So I really like this. It's more of a pro or a feature when you're using your Kindle on the iPhone. Is very easy. I'm not quite sure if it's possible. It might be on the Kindle itself, but it doesn't seem easy to figure out. But with a phone, you can quite easily take a section of a book or a quote that is important to you from something that you want to share, so on social media, and you can post that in a predefined selection of formatted posts with the quote that references the author and the book it comes from. So it's a really nice social way to share what you're reading with other like-minded people. So I think that's a nice pro as well for those of you that are interested in sharing your reading on social media. Okay, now to get into the cons of the Kindle Paperwhite. Now, there are, in my opinion, far more pros than there are cons, but this is not necessarily, as great as it is, it's not the perfect reading experience. Now, I absolutely believe it is a better reading experience on my Kindle than it is on a physical book. But there are some things that I think can be improved upon to make it the ultimate reading experience. So the first con that I want to discuss is the dictionary. Now, I know that I mentioned the dictionary being a pro of the Kindle, and it most certainly is, but I find it's very lacking. Now, the way I would traditionally look up something that I don't quite understand in a book is I'd pick up my phone. And when I would Google I typically write define and the word, and it would give me the phonetic sounding of the word. I can listen to it being pronounced. And one feature I really like about searching for definitions of words on Google is the thesaurus, the similar words, and it helps me, at least in my experience, the way I like to understand and interpret words is if I have a word that's similar that I already understand the concept, and I can tie that to the new word that I'm learning, it makes more sense to me to absorb the new information that I'm learning. On the Kindle, the dictionary gives you a definition. You don't have the ability to hear the phonetic pronunciation of the word, and you don't have the thesaurus. Now, I don't necessarily need the ability to hear the word being pronounced, but I feel it would be a huge increase in the benefit of the dictionary if Kindle added a thesaurus. It's very frustrating when you reading the pro of the dictionary is that it's built in, but I often find that it's not quite good enough, and it still has me going to my phone to get the information I'm seeking. If the definition isn't concise or well structured or written, I find that the dictionary isn't very useful, because I don't, after reading the information, understand any better than I did before I read the dictionary on the Kindle. So a bit of a con in my eyes. Another con that I find with the Kindle is, depending on the publisher, is formatting issues. So I know this can happen in physical books as well. Sometimes you buy a book and there's misalignment or pages missing, but generally these are picked up by the publisher before they go out into stores for consumers to purchase. On the Kindle, I've probably purchased maybe 15 or 20 books in the last 6 months, and there's maybe been 2 or 3 that have had weird formatting issues where you could clearly tell that the story was disjointed, or something, maybe a page was missing or a paragraph. It just, little things like that can easily ruin a book because you're missing parts of it. So I found that was a little bit of a frustration and a bit of a con. Not a huge thing, but one to keep an eye on. And the good thing with that, at least I've noticed on Amazon, is they do often highlight the books that have a better experience on Kindle and don't have those formatting issues. So one to keep an eye on. One other con that I think is it's neither here nor there, but depending on the way you read, given that the Kindle is a device and you only see one page at a time, the page that you're currently reading, the inability to flip through pages and find something quickly. So it's a bit of a con, but it's one that I'm willing to trade off, because I feel there's far more pros in my Kindle Paperwhite than there are cons. So I don't mind giving up this ability to flip through pages, but it is one worth mentioning. If you're a person that likes to flick to something that you've read and quickly find and reference a section in a book that is far more easy to do physically, that's going to be a bit of a burden for you. Now, you can most certainly flick through chapters and look and find different parts of the book. That's not impossible on the Kindle. It's just a different experience on the Kindle, and it's probably as good as it can be on a digital device. And the last con that I want to mention today is not so much with the Kindle itself, but the Kindle cases. So I purchased, after having a bit of a dig around and trying to see what was my best option with the standard Kindle cases that you can buy. There may be some additional third-party cases available now, but when I purchased this, pretty much the day it was released, there was only the fabric cases, which is what I have here. They had a cork case, and they also had a leather case, which, as far as I'm concerned, isn't leather, and honestly I don't know how they get away with saying that it is. If you felt the leather case that they have, it's plastic. It feels like they put like a leather stamp print on some cheap plastic. So I avoided that case, and I suggest you do as well for the price. And I feel out of all three, the best option is the fabric case, but it is by no means perfect. Now, I'm not sure if you can pick up on this, so I'm going to try and see if you can capture this in the camera. So just let's see if I get that. In here on the edge is like a plastic sort of, almost maybe a rubber seal for the fabric, and this has already started fraying. There is like multiple sections on my case where the lining that basically seals the fabric and keeps it all down and together has peeled away where my hand has been holding. So if I'm reading and I'm holding like this, you can see my finger just sort of rubs on the case here over it's, and this was not recent either. I'm 6 months into reading on the Kindle, and within maybe 3 months the case started to fray. So I paid $45 Australian for this, which is far too much for what it is. I think it's probably worth about $15 or $20 at best, to be honest. I didn't have a choice. Ultimately, I picked the best of a bad bunch as far as I'm concerned, but it's definitely worth. I don't know if you can see on there too, it's starting to fray. If my camera will pick that up, you can sort of see on there the edges are starting to fray. So I try to avoid sort of holding the case in those positions where it's causing a bit of problem. And at the end of the day, the case is there to protect the Kindle. So if the case gets ruined, so be it, as long as the Kindle is safe. But it's very disappointing that I'm not doing anything strenuous. I don't really take this out anywhere. I mostly read at home. At best, it goes in like a messenger bag that I take to work occasionally, and it's fraying from me holding it. So holding the case to read shouldn't be a problem for the case. So in my opinion, that's the biggest con on the Kindle, is the quality of the cases that they're releasing with the Kindle. So as I said at the beginning of the video, most certainly I 100% recommend reading with a Kindle device. The Kindle Paperwhite 6.8 has been an absolute game changer for me. I read on this every single day, and I have even considered repurchasing physical books that I own in a digital format, because I don't want to read the physical books. That's how much better the reading experience is on the Kindle. I love the experience. It's so much more natural and intuitive, and it feels more in line with how we navigate society and the devices that we use and are familiar with every single day of our lives. So it feels like Kindle has enhanced the reading experience. In my opinion, I wouldn't be disappointed if I never read a physical book again. And that's a big statement, right? I've actually tried and picked up some of my physical books that I haven't read yet, and I've read most of the ones on the shelf here, but I've picked up some that I've yet to read, and I find myself longing for putting them back on the shelf and wanting to read them on the Kindle, just because of the way that I read specifically. So a massive recommendation if you're on the fence about buying a Kindle like I was 6 months ago, and only read physical books, I cannot recommend this enough to you. Go and get one. You will be grateful that you did. You will not be disappointed. It is a fantastic reading experience. And ultimately, that's the key in all of this, right? You need to read in the way that is right for you. Okay, so the main thing that I like to think about when I'm reading is, why am I reading, not how am I reading? And what really matters is that you're getting the information that you're seeking by reading books in the first place. So again, thank you guys for being here. My name is Wade Vincent. If you like my pros and cons list and the review of 6 months on from having my very first Kindle Paperwhite, please click the like button below. hit the subscribe button, and thank you for being here, and good luck on your reading journey. Go and grab yourself a Kindle. You'll be grateful that you did. Thanks, guys. See you later.